My farm was my quiet escape from the world, until one entitled neighbor started treating my private dirt road like her personal racetrack. And one day, I decided to make sure she'd never speed through it again. My farm had always been the one place in the world where everything felt slow, steady, and predictable in the best possible way. Tucked behind fields and trees where the only regular sounds were birds calling in the morning, wind brushing through tall grass, and the occasional low hum of farm equipment. That quiet wasn't just pleasant, it was the entire reason I lived there. I had chosen this life very deliberately. After years of dealing with busy towns and constant commotion, I wanted space to breathe, room for my kids to run freely, and a place where my animals wouldn't be startled by engines and sirens every few minutes. Out here, life moved at its own gentle pace, and everyone around understood that peace was something we all shared the responsibility of protecting. The long dirt road that connected my property to the main highway was part of that understanding. It wasn't paved, wasn't fancy, and definitely wasn't built for speed. Technically, it was a private easement, meaning it belonged to us and existed only for our access. Because of that, we treated it with care. Everyone who used it knew to drive slowly, not because of rules posted on signs, but because of basic respect. Driving fast would kick up thick clouds of dust that drifted into homes and barns, coated fences, and lingered in the air. Worse, it could be dangerous. Kids sometimes played near the road, dogs wandered across it, and livestock occasionally crossed from one side of the pasture to the other. So we all kept it under 10 miles per hour, waved when passing, and went about our days without disturbing each other. That routine held steady for years, so long that I never even thought about it changing. Then, the subdivision was built nearby. At first, I didn't think much of it. Development happens everywhere. Eventually, a few new houses, a few new families. Maybe it would even be nice to have more neighbors. But with those new houses came a different mindset. Instead of people used to country living and unspoken rules, there were folks who treated everything like city streets, where speed and convenience mattered more than courtesy. Among them was one particular woman who stood out immediately. From the very beginning, she carried herself like she owned not just her property but everything around it. She walked with that sharp, impatient energy, always in a hurry, always looking annoyed, as if the world wasn't moving fast enough for her. The first time she came down my dirt road, I heard her before I saw her. An engine revving hard, tires crunching gravel far too quickly. Then suddenly, a huge cloud of dust rolled across my yard like a sandstorm. It was so thick, I had to shield my eyes. When her vehicle finally shot past, it felt less like a neighbor driving by and more like a car racing through a construction zone. The speed was completely unnecessary and completely unsafe. My first reaction wasn't anger, it was confusion. Maybe she didn't know. Maybe no one had explained. So I waved her down the next time I saw her and tried to talk calmly. I explained that the road was private, that families lived along it, that children and animals were often nearby, and that we all kept our speed low for everyone's safety. I expected at least a little understanding, maybe an apology. Instead, she looked at me like I was inconveniencing her just by speaking. She dismissed everything I said with a shrug and acted as if my concerns were ridiculous. That moment set the tone for everything that followed. What should have been a simple neighborly conversation turned into the beginning of a daily problem. After that, the speeding didn't stop. It got worse. Several times a day she would tear down that road like it was a shortcut she was entitled to use however she pleased. Each time, the dust clouds grew thicker. My porch furniture collected a constant layer of dirt. Freshly washed windows were coated again within hours. The air sometimes felt gritty to breathe, but the mess was only part of it. The bigger issue was fear. Every time I heard her engine roaring toward the property, my stomach tightened. About the dog chasing a ball too close to the road, about one of the goats wandering through a gate. It only takes one reckless moment for something terrible to happen. What made it worse was the complete lack of consideration. She didn't slow down, didn't wave, didn't acknowledge anyone. It was as if the rest of us simply didn't exist. The road, our homes, our safety, none of it mattered compared to shaving a few seconds off her commute. I tried small solutions first. Polite waves turned into firm gestures to slow down. Then I put up signs asking drivers to reduce speed and reminding everyone it was private property. By the next day, the signs had disappeared. Whether they were removed deliberately or simply ignored, the message was clear. She didn't care. The peaceful, cooperative environment we had built for years felt like it was unraveling because of one person's entitlement. The calm rhythm of farm life, the very thing I had worked so hard to create, was constantly being interrupted by the sound of tires spinning too fast and dust rising like smoke signals announcing her arrival. Instead of kids laughing freely outside, there was hesitation and caution. Instead of feeling relaxed on my own land, I found myself irritated and tense, always waiting for the next disturbance. The sanctuary I had built no longer felt completely safe or quiet, and that realization hurt more than anything. Because when someone disrespects your home, it's not just an inconvenience, it feels personal. Like they're stomping through the one place that's supposed to belong entirely to you. What had once been a peaceful refuge was slowly turning into a daily source of stress, all because one person decided that her convenience mattered more than everyone else's peace. At the beginning, I genuinely believed the situation could be solved the normal, reasonable way. Out here, problems between neighbors usually don't turn into battles. They get handled with a quick conversation, a bit of mutual understanding, and maybe a handshake. Rural living depends on cooperation. Everyone relies on everyone else. You help Rack fix a fence when it breaks, keep an eye on livestock if someone's away, and show simple respect because that's how small communities survive. So my first instinct wasn't anger or revenge, it was patience. I kept telling myself that maybe the new neighbor just didn't understand how things worked on a private country road. Maybe she thought it was public. Maybe she didn't realize how dangerous speeding could be with kids, pets, and animals nearby. I figured a calm, friendly talk would clear everything up. So that's exactly what I did. I approached her politely, explained that the road was privately shared, and asked if she could slow down for safety. I wasn't accusing or demanding anything at all. I was just asking for basic courtesy. But instead of listening, she reacted like I was inconveniencing her. She barely let me finish before brushing me off. There was no apology, no acknowledgement, not even a simple okay. Just irritation, like my concerns didn't matter. That short conversation told me something important. This wasn't ignorance, it was indifference. Still, I tried to stay calm. Maybe she'd think about it later and change her behavior. But the speeding continued exactly the same. If anything, it seemed more deliberate, like she wanted to prove she wouldn't be told what to do. Every time she flew past my property, the engine roaring and dust exploding behind her tires. It felt less like carelessness and more like defiance. Since talking hadn't worked, I moved on to clearer reminders. I put up visible signs at the entrance of the road, private road, and slow down. Bright, reflective, impossible to miss. I figured even if she ignored me personally, she couldn't ignore posted warnings. The next day, 2 of those signs were gone, not fallen, not damaged, removed completely. The last one had been twisted, sideways. Seeing that was frustrating in a different way. It wasn't just reckless driving anymore, it felt intentional, almost disrespectful, like someone purposely crossing a line just to show they could. I replaced them anyway because I still wanted to handle things properly. I didn't want conflict, I just wanted safety. When signs didn't help, I tried a simple barrier. Nothing aggressive, nothing meant to block access, just a rope with reflective tape to signal drivers to slow down. Something that said, hey, take it easy here. But she didn't slow down. She didn't even stop. She drove straight through it, snapping the rope like it wasn't there. That moment really stuck with me. It wasn't an accident. Anyone would notice a barrier across a narrow dirt road. She saw it and chose to ignore it. That's when I started realizing this wasn't a misunderstanding or forgetfulness. It was pure disregard. She simply didn't care how her actions affected anyone else. I tried one last neighborly approach. Maybe someone else in her household would be more reasonable. I caught her husband outside one afternoon and explained everything calmly. I talked about the dust covering our homes, the kids playing nearby, the animals getting spooked, and how we were just asking her to slow down. He listened for a few seconds, then shrugged and said, "Happy wife, happy life," like it was some harmless joke, and walked back inside. That response hit harder than I expected. It wasn't just dismissal, it was surrender. He didn't even want to try. It made me realize that there wasn't going to be any cooperation from their side at all. After weeks of trying to handle it privately, I finally called the sheriff's department. I didn't like doing that. Out here, calling law enforcement over a neighbor feels extreme, almost embarrassing. But I was running out of options. Safety had become a real concern. At the very least, I hoped an official warning would scare her into changing her behavior. The deputy who came out was respectful and understanding. He listened to my story, looked over the road, and agreed that the speeding was dangerous. He even went and spoke to her directly. Watching that gave me a little hope. When someone sees a uniformed officer at their door, you expect them to take things seriously. And for a short time, it seemed to work. The next day, she drove slower. The dust clouds were smaller. Things felt calmer. I thought maybe that was all it took, just a formal warning. But it didn't last. Within 24 hours, she was back to speeding like nothing had happened. If anything, she seemed even faster, like she was doing it out of spite. I called the sheriff's office again, frustrated and confused. That's when they explained something I hadn't fully considered. Because the road was private property, they had very limited authority to enforce traffic laws there. It wasn't treated like a public street. Without clear legal violations or posted enforceable regulations, their hands were mostly tied. In other words, there wasn't much they could do. If I wanted something more permanent, I'd have to take her to civil court. Hearing that felt like the air got knocked out of me. Court meant lawyers, paperwork, filing fees, and months, maybe years, of waiting. It meant spending thousands of dollars just to argue that someone should stop driving dangerously on my own road. The whole idea felt absurd. Why should I have to pay that kind of money just to protect my own home? Farming already takes enough time and energy. I didn't have spare cash or free days to sit in legal offices. And even then, there was no guarantee. I'd win. Maybe she'd fight it. Maybe it would drag on forever. The more I looked into it, the more impossible it seemed. That's when the frustration really set in. I had done everything the right way. I talked politely. I put up signs. I tried barriers. I involved her family. I called the sheriff. I followed every responsible step an adult is supposed to take. And none of it worked. Nothing changed. She faced no consequences, while my daily life kept getting worse. My house stayed dusty. My animals stayed nervous. My kids couldn't relax outside. Every solution led to a dead end. I remember sitting on my porch one evening, watching another cloud of dust roll across the yard, feeling completely helpless. It's a strange feeling when you realize that even though you're right, you still can't fix the problem. Like you're stuck watching someone disrespect your home over and over, and there's nothing official you can do to stop it. That sense of powerlessness was worse than the noise or the mess, because it meant I wasn't just dealing with an inconsiderate neighbor. I was dealing with a situation where the system offered no real protection. Talking didn't work. Rules didn't work. Authorities couldn't help. Court was too costly. Every path was blocked. And little by little, that peaceful farm life I loved started feeling tense and stressful. All because the normal, legal ways of solving a problem simply weren't enough. After weeks of trying to handle everything the proper way and getting nowhere, something inside me slowly shifted. At first, I had been patient. Then I was frustrated. But now, I was simply tired. Tired of the dust settling on my porch every afternoon. Tired of hearing that engine roar, like a warning siren. Tired of feeling anxious on my own property. The worst part wasn't even the inconvenience anymore. It was the feeling of helplessness. I had followed every reasonable path available to me. I had talked politely, posted signs, tried barriers, and called the authorities. Nothing worked. It felt like I was the only one expected to be responsible while she faced no consequences at all. And that's when it finally clicked for me. If nothing changed, nothing would change. Waiting for her to suddenly develop consideration clearly wasn't realistic. Waiting for the sheriff to magically gain authority over a private road wasn't going to happen. Going to court would drain time and money I didn't have. So if I wanted my peace back, I would have to focus on something I actually controlled, my own land. I stopped thinking about how to stop her directly and started thinking about how to make speeding naturally impossible, or at least incredibly inconvenient. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want damage or drama or some dangerous confrontation. I just wanted her to slow down or choose another route. That was it. Nothing more. I wasn't trying to win. I simply wanted my quiet life back. Once I looked at it that way, the solution felt simpler. Instead of fighting her, I could change the environment. After all, this wasn't a paved city street. It was a dirt farm road. And dirt roads have a way of teaching drivers lessons all by themselves. Anyone who's grown up around rural land knows that uneven ground, loose gravel, and rough patches automatically force you to slow down. You don't need signs or arguments. Your vehicle makes the decision for you. So I started planning small improvements and adjustments that would make the road behave like a proper country path. Again, not a shortcut for speeding. Nothing dangerous, nothing hidden. Just honest, practical changes. The kind you'd expect on any farm trail. Over the next few days, I got to work. I used my tractor and grading tools to reshape certain sections. I loosened up packed dirt so it wouldn't feel like a smooth racetrack. I added gravel in spots where traction would naturally encourage slower driving. I created subtle dips and uneven textures that required careful navigation. The kind of surface that makes you instinctively take your foot off the gas. It wasn't sabotage. It wasn't a trap. It was simply returning the road to what it was always meant to be. A slow, cautious access path, not a speedway. The funny thing is, as I worked, I actually felt better. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't just sitting around frustrated. I was doing something productive, something within my control. Every pass with the tractor felt like I was taking a little piece of my peace back. By the time I finished, the road looked completely normal from a distance. Still just dirt and gravel. Still simple and rural. But anyone trying to fly down it at high speed would immediately regret that choice. The next morning, I sat on my porch with my usual cup of coffee. It had almost become a ritual by then, waiting for the familiar sound of her engine. Right on schedule, I heard it in the distance. That same aggressive acceleration, that same confidence, like nothing had changed. She crested the small hill and entered the road the way she always did, fast and careless. But within seconds, I noticed something different. Instead of gliding smoothly like before, her vehicle bounced slightly. The tires kicked gravel. The suspension jolted over the uneven ground. I watched her brake lights flicker on almost immediately. The speed dropped, not because I told her to, not because a sign ordered her to, but because the road itself demanded. But Bizik doesn't argue. The surface simply wouldn't allow her to drive the way she wanted. She tried to maintain speed for a moment, then clearly thought better of it. The car slowed to a crawl. For the first time since she'd moved in, she drove past my house at a normal, careful pace. No giant dust cloud, no roaring engine, just a cautious roll. I can't even describe how satisfying that felt. It wasn't about seeing her struggle, it wasn't about punishment. It was about relief. Pure relief. The air stayed clear. My animals didn't scatter. My porch didn't shake. It was quiet. It's quiet. Something so simple, yet it felt like getting my home back. She tried again later that afternoon, probably hoping it was just a fluke. Same result. The uneven surface forced her to slow down. You could almost see the frustration in the way the car crept along. Speeding simply wasn't worth it anymore. And that's the thing about inconvenience. It's a powerful teacher. People might ignore words, they might ignore rules, but they rarely ignore discomfort. After a couple of days, something interesting happened. She stopped using the road altogether. Instead of racing past my property, I noticed she started taking the longer public route to the highway. It added a few extra minutes to her drive, but it was smoother and easier for her. And honestly, that was fine with me. I didn't need her to suffer. I just needed her gone from my road. And just like that, the problem that had stressed me out. 4 weeks disappeared. No arguments, no shouting matches, no legal battles. Just simple, natural consequences. The peace returned so gradually that at first I didn't even notice it. Then, one afternoon, I realized something strange. I hadn't heard her car all day. The air looked clearer. The porch wasn't dusty. The dogs were lying calmly in the yard instead of jumping at every engine noise. My kids were riding their bikes near the driveway again without me constantly watching the road. That's when it hit me. This was how it used to feel. This was the farm life I remembered. Calm / safe, quiet. Even the small sounds came back. Birds in the trees, wind through the grass, the soft creak of the barn door. Those gentle noises had been drowned out for weeks by frustration and engines. Now they felt louder somehow, like nature reclaiming its space. The tension that had been sitting in my chest every day slowly melted away. I wasn't bracing myself. Anymore, I wasn't irritated or anxious. I could finally sit outside and relax again. And that was all I ever wanted. Looking back, I realized something important. Some people don't respond to requests. They don't respond to kindness. They don't respond to authority. But everyone responds to consequences. Not harsh ones, not dangerous ones. Just real, immediate feedback that makes bad behavior inconvenient. You can't always force someone to respect you, but you can shape your boundaries so clearly that crossing them simply isn't worth it. That's what finally worked. I didn't fight, hurt. I didn't argue. I didn't chase legal battles. I just changed my environment so her behavior no longer benefited her. And once the shortcut stopped being easy, she chose a different path all on her own. In the end, that's what restored everything. Not revenge, not conflict, just practical action. The farm went back to being what it was always meant to be, a sanctuary. And every time I sit on my porch now, coffee in hand, watching the dust stay settled and the road stay quiet, I'm reminded that sometimes the smartest solution isn't confrontation at all. Sometimes it's simply creating boundaries that quietly protect your peace.